make a start. Happy New Year to everyone, all the members of the committee. I hope we're going to have a good one, eh? Some good planning applications and some good decisions. I know what a good set of people you are, you see. So yes, welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee here in County Hall on Tuesday, the 7th of January. Apologies for absence.
Yes, to have received apologies from Councillors Flux, Runner Thompson and Watson.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, the Strategic Planning Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 5th of November, have been circulated. Are members happy that these are a true record of the meeting? Thank you. Have any of the members any disclosures of interest they wish to declare today? Julie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm declaring an interest in item 6, which is 24/02182/FUL. One of the original objectors is a colleague on the parish council, but also a personal friend. So I will be declaring an interest, but I am down for public speaking for that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No other declarations? Right, we'll go on to the meeting proper, the determination of planning applications. And I will briefly go through our procedure for those people watching on live stream, but anyone else attending that is unaware of the business that we conduct at strategic planning. As chair, I introduce the application. I ask our members if they have seen the site visit videos. We then have a presentation from our planning officer who gives us any updates, any changes to the recommendation, but essentially presents his report. We then have a public speaking slot, 5 minutes for objectors, 5 minutes for a local member, county councillor or parish councillor, and then 5 minutes for an applicant or a supporter. We then have questions from our members to the planning officers about the application before us, and then we debate the application, ask for a proposal, ask it to be seconded, and then we debate the issue and take a vote. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first item on the agenda this afternoon is agenda item number 5, and this is the development of up to 199 static caravan pitches, parking, reconfiguration of existing pitches and infrastructure to facilitate access with associated infrastructure, an LPG gas enclosure, EV charging and cycle parking. There's also an ancillary convenience shop, some engineering works and landscaping. And the site address is the Dunham Caravans Limited, South Meadows Caravan Park, South Road, Belford. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask our planning officer, our senior planning officer, Mr. James Hudson, to present his report. James, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I go on to the presentation, I'll just provide some updates. The Parish Council submitted letters to members on the 20th of December, and they have asked that a summary be read at committee, which is as follows. This Parish Council does not believe that this application can be determined by Strategic Planning Committee due to a lack of vital information, contradictory statements by statutory consultees in the planning report. As a consultee, one of our 8 objections to this application concerned the capacity of Belford sewage treatment plant. The 2023 EDM data referred to by the Environment Agency shows that the Belford treatment plant has one of the highest spill rates in the county. The EA state that Northumbrian Water have confirmed the plant can cope. The EDM figures prove otherwise, and NWL consultee response on their report shows only no response received. This parish council cannot understand how this application can be considered without a thorough investigation to determine the true facts concerning the sewage treatment plant's ability to handle the additional of what is basically a further 199 households, along with South Meadows housing development, which is yet to be connected to the system. We ask that the decision meeting be delayed until such an investigation can be undertaken, or that we are provided with a comprehensive explanation by the case officer as to how they are satisfied themselves with this vital aspect of the proposed development, will be able to handle the increased foul flow satisfactorily and without adding further spillages to the appalling EDM record. So in response to the Parish Council's letter, a response has been sought from NWL, and they have commented on the proposal yesterday, which has been uploaded to the public access system. And they have advised, we do not have any issues to raise with the application, provided it is approved and carried out in strict accordance with the submitted documents and drawing entitled Foul and Surface Water Drainage Strategy Addendum Report. This document reflects our pre-planning inquiry advice. We request that the following approval condition be attached to any planning consent granted, so that the development is implemented in accordance with the named document. And then they've put a condition which states the development shall not be implemented in line with the development shall be implemented in line with the drainage scheme contained within the submitted document entitled Foul and Surface Water Drainage Strategy Addendum Report, dated September 2023. The drainage scheme shall ensure that the foul flows will connect to a manhole 2500 and ensure that the surface water discharges to the existing watercourse. And then the reason is to prevent the increase of flooding from any source in accordance with the NPPF. NWL also note that the proposed development will be served by Belford Sewage Treatment Works. We can confirm that Belford Sewage Treatment Works has the capacity to treat this scheme. Further to the above, the Environment Agency has also been contacted with respect to the Parish Council's response, and they have advised, I can confirm the Environment Agency regulate Northumbrian Water's discharges into a watercourse through our dedicated compliance teams via the environmental permitting regulations. This is a separate regime to the planning system. It's not within the Environment Agency's remit to assess the compliance of water companies' assets involved in development proposals during the planning consultation process. The Environment Agency's last compliance assessment of the site was carried out on the 8th of November 2024. During the compliance assessment, the Environment Agency's officers identified one non-compliance with the site's environmental permit, namely a failure to empty the site's storm sewage holding tanks in a timely manner. This was assessed as a CCS3 breach, meaning it was determined to pose a reasonably foreseeable risk of minor harm to the environment. No other non-compliances with the permit were identified during the compliance assessment visit. The next point was public protection, have been consulted on the proposal and provided a late consultation response. They've advised that there's no objections to the proposal subject to the following condition. If during development, contamination, including ground gases, not previously considered is identified, then a written remediation strategy regarding this contamination prepared by a competent person shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. No building shall be occupied until a remediation strategy has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority, and measures proposed to deal with the contamination has been carried out. Should no contamination be found during the development, the applicant should submit a signed statement indicating this is to discharge the condition. And the reason for that condition is to ensure the risks from land contamination are minimised in accordance with the Northumberland Local Plan and NPPF. And then finally, Chair, there was also minor amendments to the two following conditions to make them more precise. On page 54 This is condition 8. At the start of the condition reads, the caravan park expansion shall not be brought into use until. To make this condition more precise, in line with other recommended conditions, it will now read, the development shall not be brought into use until the rest of the condition will remain unchanged. On page 55, the start of the condition, condition 12 reads, 12 months after commencement of the caravan park extension. This condition will now be amended to read 12 months after commencement of the development. The rest of the condition will remain unchanged.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I might need to go mainly your face. So just to remind you, the development is for up to 199 static caravan pitches, parking, reconfiguration of the existing pitches and infrastructure to facilitate access with associated infrastructure, including LPG gas enclosure, EV charging, cycle parking, ancillary convenience shop, engineering works and landscaping. So the location is south of Belford. You can see Belford at the top of the screen there. That's the settlement edge. To the south, you've got Dinnings Wood, ancient woodland. To the right of the image, you have the A1 travelling north to south. And in between the fields, in between the existing caravan park, which is located to the east, is a new housing development. So the proposed site layout is up to 199 caravan pitches. The layout will be set out in a linear form. There'll be open recreation area to the north of the site. There'll be suds ponds on the eastern boundary. There'll be enhanced landscape planting along the boundaries, in particular towards the south, to buffer against the impact towards Dinnings Wood. There'll be boundary enhancements as well to the west of the site where there's a public right-of-way. These are some images of indicative plans of the caravans. The site and design will vary pitch to pitch. Conditions will be imposed on the proposal to secure final details of materials, colours, etc. This image is the existing site access, so the proposal will utilise the existing site access for South Meadows Caravan Park. This image is taken towards Belford, towards the access from the A1. The left-hand image is a view into the site from the northeast corner. So you're looking in the distance there is Dinnings Wood. To the right of the image and to the north is the public right-of-way. As you can see, arable land at the moment. And then the right-hand image is from the southwest corner. There's currently a caravan storage facility on the right of that image, and you can see the caravan park straight ahead. So this is a view towards the northern boundary. This is where they proposed the recreational area. You can see housing on the settlement edge of Belford there. And then to the right, South Meadows Caravan Park. And this is an image of views towards Dinnings Wood and the caravan storage facility. And this is where they propose a landscape buffer area and some suds ponds. The site photograph is towards the eastern boundary, this is where it'll connect in to the existing caravan park. And you can sort of see and get a feel for what the static caravans will look like on the site. And then finally, this is a view towards the public right-of-way, which is at the top of that image on the just beyond the hedgerow. And then beyond that, you've got an elevated landscape towards the open countryside. And then finally, these were taken from the caravan park, so this gives you a flavour of what's being proposed and what will be on site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, James. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the part of the meeting which involves public speaking. On the first application, we only have one public speaker this afternoon, and that's Sophie Watson, who's going to speak in support of the application. Sophie, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Sophie Watson and I'm a senior planner at Savills, and I represent the applicant Dunham Leisure, who are a family-run business. The application provides a long-term vision and master plan for the site, as opposed to a range of smaller piecemeal development proposals over time. It's intended that the proposed development would be delivered from the south of the site to the north over a period of at least 7 years, allowing for the landscaping to mature. The application was submitted in July 2023, and since that date, we have worked with the officers to find an appropriate scale, reducing from 237 pitches to 199 pitches. We would like to thank officers and councillors for working with us on this application. The scheme which lies in front of you for consideration has evolved through proactive engagement with officers and the local community, resulting in a recommendation for approval by the case officer. I do not intend to repeat the committee report in full. However, I would like to endorse the case officer's recommendation and draw attention to the key benefits of the scheme and its compliance with both national and local policy. We would like to reiterate that in total 17 comments were received from the general public, 12 of which were letters of support for the proposed development. The majority of the letters received in support of the application were from local business owners, and their reasons for supporting the proposed development centre around bringing investment into Belford, increasing local revenue, and creating jobs in the local area. In addition, it's also important to highlight the wider benefits that the proposed development will deliver. This includes a financial contribution totalling £68,780 towards the Coastal Mitigation Service, which will be secured via a unilateral undertaking. Job creation directly at South Meadows Caravan Park, but also indirectly in the local area. New controlled pedestrian crossing point on South Road, as well as a new bus stop. A 33% net gain in habitat units and a 56% net gain in hedgerow units. And based on the 2024 Pitching the Value report, the proposed development could generate approximately £958,000 worth of visitor spending for the locality and wider county each year. We note that the majority of objections received from local residents relate to matters regarding scale, which has now been reduced, and highways impact. Whilst public comments have been received noting concern over the scale of the development, we would like to reiterate that this scheme is a long-term vision for the caravan park and will be delivered over a number of years. Notwithstanding, the proposed development of 199 pitches results in a density of 20 pitches per hectare, which is considerably lower than the existing site at 26 pitches per hectare. Furthermore, it's important to highlight that the case officer has confirmed that the proposal is sustainable and fully acceptable in policy terms. The Northumberland Local Plan sets out the Council's spatial vision for the county, which includes building on existing strengths whilst diversifying and realising the potential for the rural and visitor economy. Local plan policies specifically seek to increase tourism and visitor development in the county and are fully supportive of extensions to existing caravan sites. The application site is located outside of the main tourist pressure zones, such as the coastal AONB and Hadrian's Wall corridor. It is not located in an area of high landscape value, and it's also located in a sustainable location adjacent to Belford, which is defined as a service village in the local plan. National policy is also supportive of this type of development for local business and community needs in rural areas. Therefore, the proposed development is in full accordance with national and local policy. We note that a couple of comments were received in respect of highways impact. A detailed transport assessment prepared by Local Transport Project accompanied this application. It demonstrates that the proposed development will not have a severe impact on the operation of the local highway network, given that the site access junction and B6349 and South Road junction are suitable to accommodate the traffic associated with the proposed development. The Highways Development Management Team have also raised no objection to the proposed development and have concluded it's acceptable in highways terms. To summarise, the proposed development has no objection from any technical consultee on any topic. As such, in accordance with paragraph 11D, there are no clear technical reasons for refusing planning permission. The proposed development fully accords with the development plan and national planning policies, which establish a presumption in favour of sustainable development. We therefore request that you support the officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you. Members of the committee, it's now the opportunity for you to ask questions of our planning officers. Georgina?
Thank you, Chair. There's a few questions. I'll just ask one, though, because I imagine others will pick up on the sewage, etc. The visual amenity aspect, which was one of the objections raised by the council, could you just, and I know we can only look at this application, but could you give me some, would there be any application that be potentially not acceptable from a visual point of view at proximity to Belford Hall? And is it only acceptable from a visual amenity point of view because of the landscaping and so on? So if you could tell me a bit more about how you come to the conclusion that the visual aspect's acceptable.
Yeah, thank you. So when determining the application, it's good to recognise there's strong visual policies within Northumberland's local plan and Belford's as well. They've currently undertaken their neighbourhood plan. The applicant submitted a landscape visual impact assessment where they took several vantage points around Belford to look at the visual impact of the development. So first off, policy, I think it was policy 14 of the Belford neighbourhood plan, talks about the visual impact from the key sites in Belford, like Belford Hall, etc. Given the topography and distance and intervening vegetation, there is actually a limited impact from those areas. The nature of the development, so in the context of, it's a change of use from agricultural land to static caravans, there is going to be a visual change there. So it's good to recognise that, but you've also got to look at it in the context. So the main visual impact is going to be when you're actually closer to the site rather than from a distance, and then it's looking at the harm, and you're looking at the context. So you're viewing the site in the context of there already being an existing caravan site there. So if it was for sort of larger built-up form of development, then we would, we potentially could take a different view on the visual impact. But we're just looking at it from, a caravan, static caravan site.
Can I, Chair, if I could just clarify, the assessment was done by the applicant?
The assessment was, the landscape visual impact assessment was, but we'll assess that.
This has come up before with sound surveys and stuff. I mean, there's an obvious lack of independence by definition. If the applicant, they're not going to say, oh, look at the dreadful views of, which frankly, I've mentioned this at local area council meetings before, haven't I? And I don't know if it's now needs to be developed, but frankly, I don't think this is a subjective judgment. I don't think anyone could see white tins are attractive. Let's be perfectly honest. They are, often they're nice spaces, but they impact everyone else's view. They've got nice views, but everyone else has seen these white tins. But there's a really obvious point that we should be looking at independent, because they're obviously not independent when they're doing their assessment. That's a very straightforward, logical point.
Georgina, can I just say I asked exactly the same question this morning at the pre-meet. And again, you know, this is a substantial development. It's an awful lot of caravans. But on that particular occasion, James was saying to me, you know, the very fact that the extension is down in a depression, it's in a hollow. And, you know, when I was reading the objections to, you know, people were worried about the view from Belford Hall and the fact that, you know, it's not standing prominent. It's actually down in the dip, so you're sort of slightly looking over the top of it. But again, you know, I wanted to hear from James this morning that we'd done our bit to soften the impact of the caravans in terms of, you know, trees and shrubs around the edge, and, you know, he confirmed that.
I can just add to that as well, Chair, that there is the LVIA is a requirement of the policy, so they have to submit that, and we will assess that independently. But in terms of the landscape impact and what they can do, we have made them reduce the scale of the development. They've put buffers around the margins. There is a natural screening effect with the depression and it being a lower level than the surroundings. But they've done a lot of work to try and screen it and soften the proposal as much as possible. But we've also requested a condition which will go on to the proposal as well to try and minimise that visual harm.
I think Liz would like to say a word as well.
Yeah. So thank you, Chair. Councillor Hill, just back to your point about the independence of the LVIA and how we assess the impact harm. So we do ask the applicants in applications like this to submit a landscape and visual impact assessment to accompany the application. And it's through that document that we're able to use that to be able to assess our policies against it. So what James has taken you through is the raft of policies that inform whether we think a development is acceptable or not. The key policy on this, which James highlighted at the beginning, is policy 14 of the Belford Neighbourhood Plan. And what it's saying is that there shouldn't be development unless it can be sensitively accommodated in the landscape without significant adverse effect on the important views into and out of the settlement. So what we do is we look at that landscape and impact visual assessment and ask ourselves that question. Does it have significant adverse effects on important views in and out of the settlement? And what James has taken you through is he's asked himself that question, he's run through that, and the key views is that, in his view, giving the topography, the vegetation, the built form, the proposed development would not be visible from the majority of Belford, and wouldn't be of a detriment to the character of the wider landscape. So we use the impact assessment to help us inform how we apply the policy. And the test for you is, does it have that significant adverse effect? And we've run through it. We've got all that information that's been prepared by the applicant, and we've come to that conclusion that it doesn't. It's not that it's biased. It's a tool that we use to assess the policy. Thank you, Chair. I hope that helps.
Are you content, Councillor Hill?
But I mean, I'm just going to make the point, and we've all seen, when you do sound surveys, if you do the sound from here or there, we've all seen estate agents, my neighbour's house is up for sale, and it's like, that bedroom is nowhere near that size. You must have taken quite a clever angle, but, you know, I'll be cynical as I naturally will.
Thank you. Any more questions? Malcolm Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just two quick questions. 199 static pitches, 100% static. So there's no touring facility within that.
That's correct, no.
Thank you. That's.
Yeah.
And what's the engineering works? I mean, it just seems a strange thing to throw into a leisure application. All of a sudden we've got an industrial application mentioned. I just want to know what the engineering works is. We're not going to see a massive industrial unit or something.
No, the engineering works will just be the machinery operations to construct the hard standing, and that needs to go in. The access road upgrades, etc. It won't be anything other than change of use to static caravan.
It's basically just what they need to run the site.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine.
Any more questions? Mr. Swinburne?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, because I think you've sort of obliquely answered this, but I'm not 100% clear. So when it says in the report that the scale was reduced from presumably the original thing that was put forward, can you explain exactly why that's better or more acceptable, presumably, than the original?
The scale was reduced for several reasons. So there's the flood risk element to it. So the applicant had SUDS attenuation ponds, or has SUDS attenuation ponds. They needed to be increased to hold and store enough water for the 100-year plus climate change storm event. We also wanted more open space in the proposal. So we felt at the original submission there was just too many units on the site, and it needed to have a bit of relief and a bit more openness within the site itself for recreation, and also just to create that buffer to minimise the landscape harm and the visual impact, and soften the visual impact of it. So the applicant went away and reduced the numbers to come in with a revised proposal.
Okay, thank you. That is helpful. Going to the questions over sewage. Now, I don't recall ever seeing Northumberland Water object to a planning application on the basis they didn't have capacity at a sewage works. Could you address that point?
Yes. So you may be correct in that instance. They are a statutory consultee. We consulted them twice on the proposal because the applicant is connecting it to the Belford Sewage Treatment Works, and they didn't respond. So it's taken an extra push to really get them to respond to the proposal. They say they have capacity to treat the water, and the Environment Agency regulates Northumbrian water, and we've followed that up. So we've got two systems. We've got the planning system and the permitting system. So the Environment Agency controls and regulates them through the permitting process. But in terms of your question about them accepting the flows, then they do. But there is instances actually in Wooler, for example, they had capacity issues, and in that case they weren't accepting any additional flows. So there is some examples out there where they won't.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful, because I wasn't sure whether they were actually allowed to, or whether it was just we'd never seen it, was all. And the final question is around nutrient neutrality. Kind of, to me anyway, the most surprising statement in the report is page 47, 7.46, where it says development achieves nutrient neutrality due to the land use changing from a primary farming with a higher nutrient load to a proposed primary residential land use, and so no additional mitigation. Because we know this is a nutrient neutrality zone, and so you have to take that into account. Obviously, it is surprising that 199 caravans, which probably will at least be 50% occupied throughout the year, are going to have less nutrient load than a wheat field. My question, though, is if that wasn't a wheat field, if it was a wheat field, but if it was run under regenerative agricultural principles, there wouldn't be a nutrient load there. So how do we take that into account when we're assessing this? Because obviously 199 caravans, with all the people flushing the loos, will have a nutrient loading, and quite a considerable one would thought.
So in terms of nutrient neutrality, this is something that was brought in by Natural England. They have a metrics, like nutrient neutrality spreadsheet that the applicant has to submit, and that gives you, so when we refer to agricultural use or cereal crop, these are just used from their spreadsheet, and that gives you the number. So in terms of best practice, or you know, how there could be two separate farms and they could be differently managed. One could have better outcomes than the next. This is just purely taken from a calculation, a spreadsheet that Natural England have produced.
Okay, I can see how you've got to the conclusion, although it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense in the real world, unfortunately. But I can see how you've come to that conclusion. Because if we were building 5 houses on a brownfield site in Belford, we would have to be mitigating that nutrient, and yet we've got 199 units here on a greenfield site, and we're not needing to do that.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Anything to chip in there from our senior planning officer? We're talking about nutrient neutrality, and I can see where Martin's coming from. You've got all these caravans increasing the nitrate into the sewerage system, but
what I can say is that we take our advice from our technical experts. So the applicant has undertaken a ecological assessment. They've carried out all the requirements to satisfy the nutrient neutrality. They've carried out a WFD assessment, and these have been assessed by Natural England themselves. They've been assessed by the Environment Agency, and they've been assessed by our ecologist. And we have gone back to the applicant on several occasions as well to ask them for further information. So the applicant has gone through several measures to try and overcome the consultee objections, and they've come to an acceptable scheme which can be supported by the consultees.
yes, okay. Seems very technical, doesn't it? I wish it was a little bit easier to understand for the members. Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. When we had the speaker tell us about the application, she mentioned it was going to be phased. I don't remember seeing any of this in the report, so I was just wondering, are the officers happy that this is going to take 7 years to complete? And are we expecting all the hard standings to be done and for them to just to fill up as they go? Because that means there's going to be, you know, if they do 50 at a time, every year there's going to be the machinery that Councillor Robinson mentioned going onto the site, laying concrete, all of the stuff going in and out. So how do we feel about the fact that this isn't going to be done? It's going to be 7 years, and some of us might not be here when it's finished. And as we know, with house builders, what tends to happen, halfway through the thing, they decide, oh, we don't want those anymore, so they come and ask for a variance, which is a lot easier to get than actually, you know what I mean? If they could ask for a variance, which is easier to get than a new planning application. So I'm just wondering where the officers stand as far as this phasing of the project is concerned. And are we concerned about the machinery coming in and out every year? And what about the people who are on the site? What about site safety? What about kids running around? All of that sort of thing. So if I could have a reply to that, it would be very helpful for me and others, I guess.
Thank you. With respect to the phasing, while the applicant's saying that it's going to be brought forward in phases, we've considered it as a whole, and we've written our conditions as such. So the proposal will have to come forward. They'll have to discharge their conditions and do works prior to occupation or prior to commencement of development. So there's no wording. So they'll have to do quite a lot prior to any occupation or prior to any commencement of the development.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, Chair, I heard and understood every word of that, but in that order, I'm not particularly sure I understand what you meant, to be honest with you. I'm just concerned that this could take us down a rabbit hole of non-compliance and just, you know, phasing it is not a particularly good idea. I can see why they didn't come and say we want 50 and then come back and get another 50 and all the rest of that stuff. For convenience wise, at least we know how big it's going to be and we've talked to you about it. But the whole thing is now, as far as I'm concerned, wide open to all sorts of interpretation about what are you going to tell them that they've got to put the 199 concrete slabs down first? Is that what you're telling me?
no, they'll get permission to construct it, and once they commence development in accordance with the approved plans, they will be able to develop it and bring it forward as they choose. So.
Chair, if I may
Yes,
just
of course.
come in on this point as well, if it's of any reassurance, Councillor Reid. In actual fact, not having a phasing plan is probably better than having a phasing plan, because what we want to see is lots of the whole site pre-commencement conditions discharged properly so that then development can commence. It's like any development, from the very small to the very large. Once development is commenced, we don't have any tools to cause people to bring it or to conclude it. Obviously, phasing in some of these really big residential sites, for instance, can help, but it also pushes down the line discharge of some conditions at further parts of the site that can also, over time, cause confusion. So in actual fact, what the speaker did talk about was this is a whole master plan for the whole site, and that we know as the conditions come in, we're going to see everything for the whole site rather than it being piecemeal phases coming through to add to confusion. So from an LPA's perspective, actually, this is the better way to do the application. And, you know, however the applicant chooses then to fully implement their consent would be a business choice for them. Thank you.
So could I just ask about the variances then?
So they're absolutely entitled to come in and vary some of their consents, but what we would always be looking at is that they discharge all of their pre-commencement conditions that apply to the whole amount of the units coming in. In our experience, it's unlikely that they start to vary right back to then. They can, and they can put in variations. We can't stop that. But they'll have done an awful lot of work to even get to this point, to get the application before committee today.
Councillor Robinson.
Just to try and clarify Councillor Reid's point there, what you're saying is that whereas you can't tell them to plant 189 static caravans on concrete pitches, what you are going to tell them to do is do all the boundary treatments, the landscaping treatments, put the road in, connect to the sewage system. All the things that you've conditioned will be in place for the first one, not the last one. Is that correct?
Yeah, depending on each condition, a lot of work will have to be done either prior to commencement or prior to occupation of any caravan.
Good. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? From the chair, I've just got one question. You know, I was reading the report, and I like the emphasis in the new NPPF about good design. And, you know, obviously aware that Northumberland doesn't have a design code, and we're looking at the National Design Code. But when assessing this application, James, you know, I look at what's in front of me, and it's saying, you know, we can only refuse sort of poor design. But I look at what's in front of me, and to be honest, you know, it's rows and rows of caravans. And I'm just wondering what ticks the box for you in good design. Yes, it all has to work, people have to get in and out, there's got to be a good network, but you know, when I look at something, a building or a development for good design, you know, what are we saying here about good design?
I think what we have to first remember is that we're looking at the siting of the caravans rather than the design of the caravans themselves. So we're looking at the layout, we're looking at the landform, we're looking at the openness and the open space. For the layout, no, they've got two contrasting designs here. They could have, if you look at the current South Meadows site, it's not a linear form of development. They've got like circular forms of development, and I think like this reflects the layout of the fields more, and it sits better within the landscape. I think they've when I look at design, I look at the ecology and landscaping design of it as well. But you have to sort of take it in the context of what you're looking at as well. So we're assessing it as a static caravan park. So while you might not think it's a beautiful proposal, as you know, the NPPF talks about beauty, it is characterful to itself, if that makes sense. It is a caravan park, and it is in keeping with the wider sort of extension to South Meadows.
Yes, well, okay, but I'm not enthralled by the design myself. You know, I compare it with other caravan parks, and I'm not a lover of caravan parks myself. But, you know, I think of Percy Wood at Swarland, and there, you know, as the title says, there's a lot more woodland, and you go and visit people who are in the caravan park there, and, you know, it's not living with nature, but you've got pheasants and deer and everything running around, which to me I find exciting design. I just wish that maybe in this application there was a little bit more trees in between the lines and that sort of thing. But no, accept that. So, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, you've asked your questions. I hope you're satisfied with the answers. Would someone like to make a proposal? Certainly. Councillor Ball.
I would like to propose that this planning that we see in front of us with the addressed conditions, yeah.
Is approved.
Yeah, is approved.
Thank you. And Councillor Stewart, you're seconding that application? Would anyone like to speak to the application? Councillor Hill? Oh.
I think, and you've touched on it too, Chair, as I mentioned at local area councils, you feel with caravan applications there's not too much to hang it on in the way that you can when it's housing, when it's with the sort of design. I think I'm not satisfied with the visual impact. As Martin said, always would have these with water issues, sewage, flooding. There's always this denial that there's an issue, and there's a caravan park near mine, and it's creating significant issues. It's still being denied, but the evidence is there in relation to drainage and sewage and so on. And I think overall, you look at the sort of the benefit, and I think about the benefit. There is some benefit in the caravan park, but is it worth the harm? Is it? I mean, people don't ask for caravan parks and industrial estates, do they? The prime, the prime land. And you think of what other uses, housing's an obvious one, but even more exciting and regenerative. And I just, I'm sort of doubting this one.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Chair, just a couple of things. I think we have to take cognizance of the fact that the visitor numbers to Northumberland are increasing tremendously. And as such, we have a responsibility, in fact, it's one of our missions, to stimulate economic growth, and therefore we must provide accommodation. With regard, Percy Woods, Chair, as the previous occupier, can I say it depends where they locate you, as to whether you feel as if you're part of the woodland or not.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And finally, Chair, and I think more relevant, design at present is determined on a national basis. We met just before Christmas, Chair, and I know unfortunately you couldn't attend yourself, the local working group, and we'll be tackling design as recommended by the new Labour government with the new rules that they're bringing in, and it's one of the things we'll be tackling and addressing the very concerns. And I think you make a very valid point. For example, had there been trees throughout caravan parks, that could become irregularity and a one that we introduce in future caravan parks. And it's something we should bear in mind. But more importantly, we want the Northumberland theme to be adopted in developments in future. I just thought I should say that, and I couldn't say it before because it was question time.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I will be supporting this application simply because it'll help the visitor numbers in Northumberland, and rural Northumberland needs that additional monies coming in.
Thank you. Any more contributions? Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. I'm obviously, believe it or not, supportive of this because I think it's a useful addition to the accommodation in Northumberland and give people the opportunity to come and visit this great place. But I just think that the operator is going to have to put a lot of money up front if they're going to take 7 years to put 199 caravans in somewhere, and we're expecting them to put the infrastructure in first. That's a lot of money up front. So I wish them well, and I'm sure it'll be a success, but I don't think this is the last time that this site will be before this committee, because between now and 7 years, there'll be all sorts of things come up. There'll be the fact that actually the infrastructure wasn't complete, or the roads weren't there, or something. The environmental works, the trees, the boundaries and all the rest of that, the boundary treatment, I'm sure will be fantastic and it'll be done first, but it's a lot of effort is going to need to be put in to that site before one caravan can have an occupant. So, you know, that is a lot of investment going in for little return for the first 5 years. I personally don't see how it can add up. But hey, you know, that's not what we're here for. Do we think this is a good thing? I personally think it is. So, best of luck to them.
Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, we are the planning committee. There's always debate about everything, and it seems that we seem to speculate in the questions about what might happen. We don't know, and that's the nature of planning. However, the question of design, it's probably a national thing. I would imagine the owners will buy off-peg or whatever you want to call it. It'll not be designed for them. I mean, there are some examples where, I think it's Felmore Park, where they're clad in some sort of wooden cladding, and they're still the same caravan type thing. But we seem to be stuck with this white box, and until that changes, or it's made to blend in, or someone comes in 5 years in advance and says, I'm going to want to put a planting application in, I'm going to put the tree planting in now, and then in 5 years' time it'll be half up. I just wish there was a bit more advanced planning, because trees don't take that long to grow, and they can cover things and make things blend. And I just think there should be some more forward planning on these applications. Hopefully, if it's a 7-year thing, they'll do the tree planting or whatever they need to do to not disguise it. I don't think anybody wants anything disguised. I just think it makes it easier on the eye than tons and tons of these white boxes, as been referred to. But I will support.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Does just said there's always a fine balance at our planning applications, and this site's no different. There was obviously several problems with it. All those problems seem to have been addressed, as far as I can see. Sewage, water, etc., etc. The planning thing, the design, I'm not sure we should go near it as a committee, because of the amount of exactly what you're talking about we've got throughout the county. And unless we're going to do it throughout the county, then I'm not sure we should penalise one thing. One of the main things, I always read the parish council objections and that. And the main one seems to have been the traffic. And inevitably there'll be a rise in traffic. But the road systems and that have all been classed as compatible, they've all been classed as capable of taking the traffic to this thing. The reason I asked about tourers was because that might have flavoured what I thought about that, but we're not seeing tourers here, so it's all statics. And with reference to what Councillor Wallace said, we have a local plan, and the vein out of that throughout all our policies is we help small businesses, we help them develop, we help them expand, and we also help tourism. And that seems to be what we've got in front of us. So, whereas they're not material considerations, there is a local plan that we all agreed to. So, that's got to be in the back of your mind as well. So I will support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more comments? Just from the Chair, before I ask Councillor Ball to finish off, I am supportive of this application. I think it's good for Northumberland, it's good for tourism, and it's going to be good for Belford. I'm not disparaging about Belford, but it could do with a shot in the arm, and I think all these caravans and hopefully the tourists will come and spend in the shops and the cafes and the restaurants. It is, at the moment, I feel, a sleepy little place, and this might just give it that little bit kick that it needs. I hope so. Yes, on the design front too, I would, like us in Northumberland to do more. We all know good design. We go around places and sometimes the housing estates and the houses excite us, and sometimes the caravan parks do too. At the moment, I think we'll have a little bit of an ordinary offering here, but, I have been other places as well. I mentioned Percy Wood. There's also that Barmore site. I know they're luxury caravans and they seem to have lakes and everything else, but, the more we do, the more people will enjoy this, and, I feel it'll be better for Northumberland. But all in all, I'm pleased with it. I'm pleased, James, you've done your homework with Northumbrian Water. We seem to have ticked the box there, and hopefully the parish council will be content with those answers. Support the application. Just to finish off, I'd like to ask our friend Councillor Ball to conclude this application. Councillor Ball, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. So I would like to support this application because I think tourism is one of the key industries within Northumberland. We want people to come and visit here, and we need accommodation on all levels for all budgets. And as far as the designs go, it's a caravan park, and unfortunately it's the designers of caravans that need to step up in this one, not the design of the caravan park. It is what it is. I think it's going to be a great addition to the area. It's going to bring employment, opportunity, and also once it is fully up and running, that opportunity for further businesses to develop in the area, I think it can only be a good thing. So I welcome this application, and I would like to support it with the suggested conditions as well. Thank you. And thank you to the work for all the planning officers, because obviously it has went a lot of detail into this.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this application has been moved and seconded for approval. All those in favour? 10. Those against? 1. Those abstentions? 1. That application is approved. Thank you. Well, I'm not patronising anybody. I just hope it does them some good. I promise. Ladies and gentlemen, we now go on to our second application this afternoon, and that is on page 59, and that is for the construction of a new 2-storey primary school building with associated outdoor play facilities, landscaping and access at Ringway Primary School, but also the demolition of the existing buildings. And obviously that's at Stakeford, Choppington, Northumberland. Our planning officer this afternoon is James Atkinson. He's going to take us through this application. James, over to you, sir.
Are we on? Further to the publication of the agenda, we've now received a response from Sport England to the latest consultation. This was following the submission of an agronomist report by the applicant. I believe this should have been circulated prior to this meeting. However, we do have hard copies if anyone hasn't seen it and would like one. I'd also just highlight, following the back of this, we did carry an informal reconsultation with the LFA. And they've maintained their no objection in light of the additional information presented in the report.
Yeah, can I just ask the members, have you seen the Sport England? Yeah, they have. Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, just to make members aware that Sport England have maintained their objection within this, and they have provided a full wording of the response which they have requested be read out and presented as part of this. So Just to go through that now. So the provided agronomist report, which prompted the consultation with Sport England, details of the soil characteristics of the application site. The report anticipates that the estimated hours of usage for the playing fields will be under 2 hours per week per pitch, before pitch conditions deteriorate under heavy wear and tear. Had the applicant decided to fully engage with the idea of drainage improvements to the retained playing field area, there would have been scope to offset quantitative loss with qualitative gain in order for Sport England to be able to withdraw its objection. Regrettably, this option has not been tabled, and the contrast between the new school building and the site's poor quality playing field will be a glaring one. As physical activity habits tend to be formed at an early age, we consider it regrettable that the school's playing field is likely to hinder rather than support pupils' physical activity levels. And then, in light of the above, Sport England is unable to withdraw its objection to the proposal. The agronomist report also looks at measures that will need to be implemented once the temporary accommodation is removed from the playing field. This is in order for it to be returned to its pre-development quality. Should it be resolved to approve the application, then it will be necessary to impose a condition to secure remediation of the area of the playing field affected by the temporary buildings in accordance with section 4.1 of the report. Sport England will be happy to advise on the wording of such condition, and they continue with stating that they've reviewed the planning committee report and note its recommendation to approve the application. As a statutory consultee and an expert in plan for sport, Sport England expects significant weight to be given to its response in the determination of any plan application affecting playing fields. This expectation is in line with decisions in the High Court regarding the weight to be afforded of the views of statutory consultees. For example, in Quashing Planning Commission in the East Meon CC versus East Hants DC 2014 case, the judgment stated that the views of Sport England, as a statutory consultee, should be given considerable weight and only departed from for a good reason. We are concerned that the section of the report entitled Open Space falls short in respect of the above requirement in a number of instances. We recognise that the local plan authorities need to take a broader view of proposals and on balance can resolve to approve applications despite a statutory objection from Sport England. It is important that the plan and balance is made clear to members rather seeking to put forward an argument that playing field policy is met in some way or other when Sport England has stipulated that this is not the case. And then, to reiterate, they've finished by saying I would be grateful if our position could be verbally reported to planning committee. And just off the back of that, we just highlight if members were minded to approve the application in any event, officers would recommend the following condition be added to any approval. And this is prior to the first occupation of buildings hereby approved, details of a scheme of remediation and maintenance of the playing fields shall be submitted to and approved in writing by a local authority. This scheme shall include removal of temporary structures and preparation of the subsoil, import of 200 millimetres of BS 3882 topsoil, fertilising, seeding and establishment of grass cover and monitoring of the surface drainage of the pitches. And the reason given for that is to improve the quality and provision of the playing fields at the site in accordance with the MPPF. For the application itself, as the Chair's highlighted, it relates to the construction of a new 2-storey primary school with associated outdoor play facilities, landscaping and access. This will also encompass the demolition of the existing Ringway Primary School buildings and encompass the redevelopment of the site to facilitate the change in location of the school building itself and ancillary facilities. Just to clarify this point, and with the demolition and construction, this is essentially down to the timescales required for the development of the school and to basically allow for the school to continue to operate whilst the construction still takes place. Basically, one side of the site will be the development of the new school whilst the school can remain open, and then there'll be a changeover during a mid-term period. This means that students won't be displaced or have to go anywhere or lose the potential school facility. The current school provides capacity for 251 primary school age children. The intention is for this figure to remain, so the school will not provide any further capacity but maintain what is existing with updated and new facilities. As stated, the site's located within Stakeford. It's on the edge of a mostly residential area and is basically bound along one side by a curved street known as Ringway, which is a one-way street. And the access to the car park for the existing school is in there as well, and is accessed off Ringway. The site itself consists of the existing school building, which is in a central north location, with the car park being located further north. Towards the south aspect of the site, which is where the proposal is intended to go, is largely open space, grass playing fields. There's sporadic tree cover, but for the most part it's just an open space of grass area, sorry. Yeah, as noted, access to and from the site for both vehicles and pedestrians is located to the north end. This is through a single double access point for pedestrian and vehicle movements. As part of this proposal, the applicant is proposing to amend this access, and I think the key aspect of this is there's an intention to considerably expand the existing parking area. This is to go up to 33 spaces, which will include 3 accessible bays and the capacity for 3 EV bays as well. This change will have no impact on the surrounding road network, and the intention is for the one-way system to remain in place, and it should have no bearing on this. Yeah, as mentioned, the majority of the southern aspect of the site is open space. The site itself isn't allocated, so it's not allocated for educational use or highlighted to be safeguarded for a school use. However, the southern aspect of the site is designated as protected open space. In terms of where the proposed new school building to go, this will be located sort of along the northern half of this, in a strip encompassing this. Just in terms of the progress of the application from initially being submitted and being validated, just to highlight that the scheme has been significantly amended from the initial scheme that was submitted. This was due to a practical reason, essentially, that for the reasons mentioned previously for the proposed scheme's design to allow for the school to remain operational whilst the building's undertaken. That was not feasible for the location that was selected on the initial plans. So following the applicant discovering this, they did go away and provide an updated set of plans addressing this, and then also as part of that sort of round of amending the proposal, at that time we'd received a number of statutory consultees within that, and a number of concerns were raised within that, and there was a number of objections. So this facilitated almost going back to the drawing board a little bit and to allow for all of those to be addressed as well. This was accompanied by a supporting letter which addressed each of the objections and issues that have been raised in turn within this. Just going on the presentation itself, as you can see from above, that's the proposed layout as stated. You have the sort of inverse L-shaped car park to the north, and then you have an area of hard standing and sort of footpath, separate footpath leading to the position of the school building itself, and then the southern aspect of the proposal is intended to be plain pitches and just general open space. The proposal also does include a forestry school located to the sort of northeastern aspect of the site, yeah, that's basically a brief overview. The only other addition worth mentioning as well is that there is an addition of an access point along the western boundary, about 3/4 of the way down the sort of the curved side of the site. Yep, next one. So this just gives a brief overview of the proposed elevations for the school. In terms of design, yeah, we ultimately it is a school building. It's a utilitarian building first and foremost, and that there are limitations to around functionality and what is required with that. I'll cover design hopefully briefly in the next stage. And then just a few photos showing the context of the site. So on the left-hand side, you have the existing school building as is, and then the photo to the right shows where the proposed building is going to go. These are essentially taken from the same position but flipped around, so you have a small area of hard standing there, and it's basically going to be opposite of that. Next one. And yep, so some more views of this. So that would be the view from where the school building is going, looking onto the existing school building on the left-hand side there. And then on the right-hand side, with the southern view, there's this existing sort of garden area that's been with the colourful fencing. Essentially, the school building is going to come up to around halfway of that, and then go off to the right-hand side of that. The next photo is showing the sort of location that within the context of the existing playing fields on the side. And then this is just to show the surrounding areas and the residential dwellings located. So on the left-hand side there, you have the sort of eastern side of dwellings overlooking the school side, and then on the right-hand side, you have the western dwellings. And then this one just shows the location of where the proposed forestry school is going to go. So this is located just on the right-hand side of the existing car park, and access to and from this, access in terms of the actual building to and from the school. And then this is just for consideration. So on the left-hand side, you have the access point looking up to the car park, and then the one-way system looking out, which bounds the school. Great. In terms of consideration and, well, in terms of public responses, we did send out 35 neighbour notifications, and of these we did receive 7 objections. As highlighted previously, this was within the initial round of consultations, and were largely, well, were all relating to the initial design of the scheme. I'd also make you aware that we did receive a comprehensive response from the parish council in relation to the proposal. They highlighted a number of points which they raised concerns and requested clarification on, notably around the park and the inclusion of the pedestrian gate, trees, the issues of privacy and overlooking from the school into the nearby residences, flooding considerations, the intention for the school areas and the playing fields to be used for out-of-hours use and to be available to the public, and then also issues and concerns raised around the construction factors and the actual demolition and construction process on the site. Following this and following the resubmission of amended plans, we have not received anything further from the parish council, and aware that a lot of the issues that were raised in that did relate to the initial design. And as previously highlighted as well, the applicants did provide a supporting letter as part of the amendments to the proposal, whereby they did address the points raised and made a number of clarifying points. One of which I just highlight was just around the utilisation of the site for out of hours and away from the actual school use itself. So that's been removed as an element of the proposal. Basically that was tied around potentially addressing the issues which we'll get to later, well, which have been highlighted at the start and will be covered again around Sport England. I think it was felt by the applicant that due to the perceived loss of playing field on the site, basically opening up and allowing the site to be used for out-of-hours community uses could be seen as a net benefit for that, and then overcome the issues with the overall loss of playing field capacity, essentially. The way that Sport England work with their exceptions is that they are sort of ring-fenced in certain areas, and that is not considered to be a suitable solution to the loss of playing fields. So as part of that, the applicants ultimately have removed that aspect of it. I'd also highlight that there were questions raised around, I think, the public police team who had been consulted on the application around this use as well, and just ensuring that more information has been provided. But as I say, that's no longer a part of the scheme, so it's no longer applicable in this regard. Just to highlight the number of neighbour objections that we have received. It's worth noting that there was a lot of support for an improved school building and improving the facilities there. However, there were concerns largely raised around sort of boundary treatments and how that was being looked at. So that included the original scheme, which was going to include a acoustic fence along the boundary. That's now no longer a part. And then there was also the issues around overgrown hedgerows, the responsibility for maintenance of this, how that will be looked after as part of that. That again has been addressed by the applicants, and the maintenance of anything on the school premises itself is the responsibility of the school. there was other points raised around why it was this site itself that had been chosen as a redevelopment site compared to other schools which were perceived to be more deserving or alternative options, and then concerns also raised around noise and traffic levels, the use of floodlights, which again goes back to sort of out hours use and utilising the site beyond the average school day, and then also a concern around the increase in crime due to garden sharing boundaries with the visitors to access the site. Yeah, as mentioned, these have been addressed by the applicant within a supporting letter, and yeah, some of those remain applicable, but a lot of them have now been addressed by elements being removed as part of the scheme. And then in terms of the assessment that we've undertaken as part of this, I'll just quickly highlight a few points where we think the proposal does carry significant support. We particularly look at policy INF2 of the Northumberland Local Plan, which relates, whilst relating to community services, we feel it encompasses the provision of new modern facilities such as schools as well. And then specifically within this, we'd point to paragraph 100 of the MPPF, which in particular stresses the importance of the provision of sufficient schools and ensuring that those are, you know, modern and provide the biggest benefit to the children attending, that they're getting the best in terms of learning outcomes. Just to touch on the open space aspect and how this relates to the objection received by Sport England. Essentially, we've had to take a bit of a balanced view in this and understand that with the utmost seriousness, the issues that Sport England do have with the site. We are also aware that the age of the school, that there's not a whole lot of opportunities where you get to completely redevelop a school site, and it's a great opportunity to get everything right and address all these aspects as part of the wider scheme, because in the future you're not going to get that opportunity again, or it's going to be some distance there. So it was a balanced view that we took, where we took the recommendation that we did. And then beyond that, we're happy that the other areas that we've assessed are adequate and carry the support. And yeah, just to close on the application, yeah, we just highlight that with the update provided at the start, we still maintain the recommendation that we're minded to approve. However, we'll just highlight that would be with the addition of the recommended condition included within that update. So that will be included as condition number 22 within the conditions list. And then I'll just also reiterate as well, as highlighted in the supporting response, that should the committee be minded to approve the application, this would trigger a request for it to go up to the Secretary of State, because it would be against an objection of a statutory consultee.
Thank you. Thank you, James. We now come to our public speaking slot, and for this application we have two speakers. We've got our very own County Councillor, Julie Foster, speaking, and then we have a supporter, Bob Robinson. Julie, would you like to begin? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair.
About the application.
Firstly, I welcome the application in general, as it will provide better school facilities for our local children. However, I'd like to bring the members' attention to condition 9 of the planning application. Now, the Ringway site is a difficult site, as it's situated on the furthest edge of Wansbeck Estate, accessed through internal housing roads, and as such, it will impact on many residents during the construction. And before I make my ask of this committee, I'd like to advise you of some difficulties being suffered by a number of residents elsewhere in the same electoral division due to the approval of another application earlier last year. The planning permission was granted for housing to be built on the land behind Stakeford Crescent. Now, the construction management plan was submitted by the principal contractor and accepted by the planning department after the application was heard and approved at committee. Sadly, planning enforcement claim the wording in this plan is too vague to prove a number of the alleged breaches. Now, the residents have had multiple large wagons queuing up along the access road, affecting residents' ability to access or leave their homes by their vehicles. These wagons sit for long periods of time with their engines running, and that sounds much louder than the average car that's parked with their engine idling. So as you can imagine, it's a cause for concern for the residents who have to put up with this on a very regular basis. But also these residents have suffered from mud and debris on the road, and this is extended out onto the main road on Stakeford Lane, leading to a lot more complaints from a wider area. Residents are walking mud into their homes, and even on a site visit with parish colleagues just in December, I ended up with the bottom of my trousers, my shoes caked in mud. It was that bad. And even highways officers have commented that they're having or have had similar issues with developments in Choppington and Linemouth. Now, the construction method statement covers quite a bit of information, but these following sentences are the ones which have caused difficulty for enforcement. 1. All deliveries will be staggered to avoid unnecessary delays and congestions. And 2. To prevent mud or other materials being deposited on the public highway, the wheels of all vehicles leaving the site will be cleaned as necessary. The public highway will be monitored for excessive mud and cleaned with a road sweep vehicle or similar at appropriate times. Now, the deliveries are clearly not being staggered, but the wording doesn't go into any detail about any contingency plan should a number of vehicles arrive within that short time of each other. It's one vehicle out, then one vehicle in to the site, but not for the residential access road. It appears they've got no other option but appealing to the better nature of the contractors, because we just can't do anything about it, we can't enforce it. There's been no sign of wheel washing taking place on site prior to our visit, which hence the state of the mud and the debris on the road. On one occasion where I requested the road to be cleaned, our road cleaner was out of operation, so the county council had to hire in from a contractor they use. So why should residents have to put up with this? And why should we, the council, have to foot the bill for the clean-up, especially having to pay external hire costs? Simple, because the wording in the construction management plan was too vague, and that's coming from one of our planning enforcement officers. The contractor was not performing adequate road sweeping except for on the day in December when we went for the site visit. We arrived for 2 o'clock and the residents asked if we could do it every day because the road sweeper had been 5 times prior to us arriving. The last one being at 1:50 p.m. because I actually sat and watched it when I was in the parked car. For the first time, they'd connected a hose up to the water outlet. That was the first time since the construction had started. So back to condition 9 of this planning application. Why have I brought that up? Simply because I'm asking members that should the application be approved today, that any motion to approve includes that the demolition and construction method statement must be more robust and should only be approved with the committee chair and ward members' agreement. The reason being to protect residential amenity and to ensure wording is sufficiently robust to allow planning enforcement to be able to pursue any alleged breaches for the benefit of the residents who live close and around the school and in that estate. It really is important, and the problems we've had with the Stakeford Crescent one have been awful. And I just ask that we do everything we can for this application and other applications to prevent residents having to put up with what the residents of Stakeford Crescent are having to put up with. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Julie. I'd now like to ask Bob Robinson if he'd like to take the chair and speak, sir, for no longer than 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name's Bob Robinson. I'm a director at DPP, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, the Department for Education. The proposals have emerged from the DFE after they've identified that most of the current school buildings, which are now around 60 years old, are nearing the end of their design life. And in conjunction with Northumberland's education team, the school has been identified as a priority for replacement. The current application seeks to replace the existing school buildings with a modern facility which will provide a significantly improved learning environment for pupils and staff. As confirmed earlier by James, there is to be no increase in pupil or staff numbers. The new development will comprise a 2-storey main teaching block which replaces all of the current mainly single-storey buildings and will be located immediately to the south-west of the current buildings. This allows for construction of the new school alongside the still operational school. Following completion of the new building, all current buildings will be demolished to be replaced by high-quality landscaping, new parking areas and enhanced outdoor teaching and play facilities. The scheme utilises renewable technologies such as PV panels and air source heat pumps and is overall designed to achieve net zero carbon in operation. This improves sustainability of the new buildings, also ensures there will be an improvement to the overall running costs of the school. In terms of car parking, the current parking area will be extended so that all teaching and support staff should be able to park on site if required. In addition, provision is made for electric vehicle charging. Parental pick-up and drop-off will not be permitted on site for safety reasons, although this is only an issue in terms of on-street parking for short periods at the start and end of the school day. Provision is also made for an additional pupil pedestrian access from the west of the site. This is specifically included to encourage trips to the school on foot, although parking restrictions are also to be introduced to prohibit pick-up and drop-off adjacent to that access point. Whilst inevitably the relocation of the school building will change the outlook for some residents, it will also open up views for some others. In addition, the orientation of the new school removes options for direct overlooking, and the new buildings are located far enough from all existing properties to ensure the new building will have no impact on daylight and sunlight. We are of course aware of the outstanding objection from Sport England. We actually disagree with Sport England over the amount of playing field to be lost, but that could in practice be utilised for play pitches, not least as they have included areas of mounded informal soft play in their figures. Nonetheless, we have sought to address their objections by looking at options for qualitative improvement of the retained area of playing field. The only realistic option to achieve this would be drainage of the current playing field to allow for more intensive usage. However, because the fact that it wouldn't pass the options of percolation into the ground and we can't connect from the site to an existing watercourse, it would require a connection into the existing mains drainage. Now that has been rejected on policy grounds by Northumbrian Water, so it isn't an option that's available to us, unfortunately, and that is why you have the objection from Sport England. I agree that their comments carry a significant weight, but they do not involve an automatic rejection of the scheme. It's a balancing exercise, and I think your officers in their report have done that. We have to balance the Sport England objection against the wider benefits offered by the new school in terms of enhanced education provision, which has very strong policy support at all levels. In addition, there would be a new hard-standing play area on the school, which would provide enhanced sport offer for pupils. As such, I would encourage members to support your officer's recommendation for approval and endorse this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Members of the committee, have you got questions you'd now like to put to our planning officers? Councillor Alec-Wallace, sir.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the report and thanks to the two speakers. Before I ask 3 questions, if you don't mind, can I just quickly say a school being built where there's hundreds of houses. It's a massive housing estate, one of the biggest in Wansbeck. A school being built over 60 years ago, it's in the right place. It can't be in the right place today. But unfortunately, we can only look at an application that's in front of us. And it's interesting, Chair, I make those remarks because the objectors, none of them's objecting to the school. Julie wasn't objecting to the school. No one's objecting to the building of the school. However, during the course of time, and in all those years, a number of issues have been consistently raised. Can I ask first, Chair? I noticed the schoolhouse was used for educational purposes last year. I noticed 10 years ago they put in modular buildings. That meant there's more kiddies attending that school than perhaps originally planned. And it says categorically in the report that there will be 251 primary school children. How does that relate to how many children there are at present? That's my first question.
Thank you.
Yeah, as stated within the presentation, the intention is for the numbers to be maintained. As you've highlighted, there are temporary facilities that are on site at the moment. The intention is for those to be removed. So essentially, the increase in the overall scale of the proposed new school building will encompass that. So it will not lead to a net increase, but as you've highlighted, the existing 60-year-old school building might not be at the level to facilitate that, but certainly the intention is that that's how much they want cited on that site, the 251, and that number will be maintained.
Thank you, James. The reason I asked that question is because just to the, I don't know, off page, is a development of 120 houses. And there will be primary children amongst those new houses that's being built. Just off page to the right of here is a development of 30 new homes. There's a massive new scheme application on the table for further elsewhere in State Ford. So I'm going back to the fact that I hope we can accommodate all the children in that school. However, more importantly, Chair, two questions from me. One about flooding and one about the hedge. Not massive material consideration questions, Chair, but if we take the hedge first, for years, residents have had to walk their children on the road to that school because the school is responsible for maintaining the hedge. A condition here says the school will maintain the hedge, and it's rather like what Councillor Foster raised about the cleaning of mud off the wagons. It's all in the wording. And if for years that school hasn't satisfactorily cut that hedge, that parents have to walk their children on the road to access a school, can we look at the wording to ensure that at all times, the 39 weeks of the year, that parents, especially young parents pushing a chair, for example, Chairman, not forgetting when this was built, it wasn't a one-way road. It's because of the increase in traffic. We try our best to encourage our children to walk to school, but we're not going out of our way to make it safe for them to do so. 350 yards from the nearest bus stop. Not everyone has a car to get to school. It's a good walk, and not walking on the roads the way to do it. Flooding, Chair. In these chambers, we've had Councillor David Nicholson over the years. We've had Councillor Alan Cutler over the years. And a very good friend of mine who passed away, Councillor Ray Butler, Chairman of the parish, raised these concerns on many occasions, the flooding affecting residents. And I'm confused because there's been a lot said about the drainage. The football pitch is not to be drained, that was explained, because of the problems. Can I ask you, James, the flooding that affects residents in Beverley Drive, for example, is that from other open spaces or is it from the football field? Where does their problem come from?
As part of the plan application with the flooding, essentially they can only govern their own site. It's when we assess it, and when the LFA particularly assess it, it's the flooding generation from the site itself. It's not considering the wider area with this. This one has been tricky, and it goes back to the sort of Sport England objection, is that the drainage has to go somewhere on this site, and from the LFA's point of view, they'd much prefer that to be on the open spaces on the site itself, the playing fields, as opposed to potentially then having a detrimental impact on residents and creating an issue there. The result in that is that Sport England then, from their own point of view, want those playing fields protected. But ultimately the drainage has got to go somewhere, and as the speakers mentioned, we've explored a number of potential solutions to that, but ultimately we've come up short. Basically the two issues with it are the permeability of the ground, and then also the ability for the surrounding drainage operated by Northumbria Water to sort of embrace what comes off the site. I would say that this site, from the LFA's perspective, will not have an impact, a detrimental impact on the flooding that you've mentioned, and it's not being caused by the site itself. And then ultimately, we can only assess the within the parameters of the boundary of this proposal and the effects that would have on, and we cannot really address wider drainage concerns within the wider locality as part of this application. They can only ensure that what's being proposed as part of this application is safe and suitable from a drainage perspective, and they kind of go beyond the scope of that.
Chair, if I don't mind, just one little supplementary then.
Of course.
James, I do apologise, but when you get to my age, you switch off. Right, and I switched off a little while ago. I am sorry about that, it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. But can I ask you, on behalf of the residents of Beverley Drive, can they expect that the building of this school will stop the flooding that they have endured for years? Yes or no?
I can't give you, I can. Ultimately, no, because as part of this plan application, it's not their responsibility to look after that flooding because it's not being caused by this site directly. Right. And I really appreciate your frustrations with that, but ultimately they're limited to assessment of this site itself.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I did say I'd say nothing more, but not only do I have I lose me thoughts, I also tell fibs because I am going to say something else.
Well, just before you do, I'm going to ask Liz to say something.
This may save me asking.
Well, I'll try for you, Councillor Wallace. I mean, it's a difficult question you're asking, and I understand why you're asking it. What our role is to make sure that as a result of this new building, both during construction and when the new building is in, that there will be no increased surface water runoff to anywhere. That will likely include the residents of Beverley Drive. As to what's causing the current flooding, it's not for us to deal with tonight, but the responsibility of us dealing with the planning application and the feedback that we get from the LLFA is that there is going to be no increased runoff as a result of the development. And that's as much as we can give you. We can't give you any more than that. And I can see that there's going to be a CCTV survey of drainage and so forth, just to make sure that everything's operating really well.
Chair, I appreciate the responses, and I hope you appreciate when people have tried every avenue possible to try and resolve this. Yeah. They say to me, here's an opportunity, will you take it? So I've took it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Thank you.
And you know, just from the chair, just often education budgets are very tight. You know, we're not building a super school, we're building a good school, and yes, we all wish we could build a super school with a budget that was just very elastic, but it isn't. We've got a finite amount of cash, and we are going to provide Stakeford, Ringway Primary with a good school. But unfortunately, you know, there isn't the money there to really get to grips with this drainage problem. I wish there was. Maybe there will be in the future, but at the moment we're delivering super school, but we do acknowledge there is water and flooding problems, but they are going to be hopefully no worse after the school is built. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. So just with regards to the fields, the mugger facilities, etc., how can we guarantee that in the future that we won't see a change and they will come back and say that actually we need to rent out these facilities because, as stated, school budgets are under increasing pressure and it is an opportunity. So how can we ensure that? Also, with regards to the safety plan, yes, and we're saying that within certain hours there'll be the safety plan in place. but a building site outside your classroom is a very attractive prospect to a child within a school. So how can we ensure that that will be a safe place for them children to gain education? And not only that, a place where they are not distracted all day because there is a building site outside the window for the period. I think the points raised with regards to the highway, it is a very built up area and it does have that wider impact. So I think that is a big consideration which we need to look at. And also, I think it's from Department of Education, if you're listening, I think this is a bit of a wasted opportunity as well. We've got 3 other primary schools within the boundary of Choppenden as well. And this could have been, they are aging schools, they will need work in the future. So was there even some of them conversations had with regards to them other schools? And I know we're saying, and I'm not a fan of super schools by any stretch of the imagination, but I just think if we are looking long term, as I say, we've got 3 other primaries, birth rates are decreasing, and I'm just thinking if we are building a school within these boundaries, would it have not been a bit more foresight to look at the opportunity rather than a few months, years down the line coming back with that? So yeah, if you could address all them things and make the world a happy place, I will be over the moon.
I'll just deal with the last point first. I will bring James in. So you know what I'm going to say on this, Councillor Ball. I hear your frustration. There was obviously a conversation that maybe could have been had at an earlier time, but what's before members tonight is this new school, and that's what we'd like you to focus on that application. And the first point that you raised about the community facility and how can we safeguard against that, we can't. They can come in at any point with an application, they're entitled to do so, but we can look at all of the same factors again when that comes in, and you can ask for it to come to planning committee as well. I'm sure residents, the parish council and so forth will have something to say about it too. It would be publicised in the usual way and you assess it at that time. And I'm going to ask James whether he might have the detail about the safety plan. I don't know whether you've got anything more that you wanted to share on that.
Yeah, just in regards to the safety plan, we do what we can through the required supporting documents and what has been conditioned or recommended to be conditioned in terms of that. You know, they will need a construction management plan which will take into account the context of the site, the sensitivity of it, and the points that you've raised, which are very, very pertinent to the fact that it's an operational primary school. It's going to continue to be that. That's the intention with the construction process that they've carried out. I do believe it is quite a common, especially more recently, a common way of redeveloping existing primary school sites. Going back to the points I sort of raised earlier, because it allows the continual operation of the site. It means that children are not going to be transplanted, having to be bussed into other schools, causing capacity issues with that. It's a chance for the school site to remain operational while still being upgraded and redeveloped. So that is a significant safety concern. I'll just highlight that our public protection team have assessed the plans and assessed what's been submitted in support of that. They've raised no issues in that regard. So it is something that we do take very seriously and have considered as part of the application. But there are steps in there, and that can be looked at going forward by way of condition, where we can maintain that and ensure that it remains a safe site, and particularly there's no detrimental impact on the safety of children there.
Thank you. Councillor Georgina Hill.
I don't know, like it's just been said, I don't know if it's age or post-festive, but my brain's moving a bit slowly as well. So I'm just asking to go back to Sport England's objection, and I've just reread it. Am I right in saying that because sometimes I know they don't understand, they think we're like the South, where we've got such limited land, and we often haven't. I mean, in Berwick we've got playing fields coming out of reach, you know, and most of them aren't overused. Originally I thought it's a bit of an overkill. I'm thinking typically the sort of southern focus and justifying the existence and so on. But rereading it, am I right in saying that it's not so much loss of space, but they just think it's not going to be playable, linked with the drainage issues? So could you tell me a bit more about that? And is it the case that this could be resolved with money, which the county's not prepared to spend?
Yeah. So, on both points, yeah, you are essentially correct. For the first part, it is the loss of overall facility there. So we're talking about a reduction of 33%. That is something that has been disputed by the applicant and was mentioned in the speaking earlier. We maintain the position that Sport England take and that the calculation that they've done is correct. So with that loss, it's then how do we address that and improve that in other ways? And the way they go about that and do that is through improving the existing facilities that are there, so that the actual quantity is gone, but the quality of what is there is then improved to enhance what's there, enhance the ability for the fields to be played on. The quality there means that they're not going to be run over with mud. You know, they're not going to be basically unusable in wet or adverse weather conditions, and that there's more chance there for the fields to bounce back and to be in use more, which is a net positive for everyone. Ultimately, we want children outside and playing and making use of the facilities there at school. That's what they're there for. The money question, we do, within the wider plan and balance, have to take into consideration the limitations that are impacting on the proposal. We are aware that it's a Department of Education application, and that ultimately their goal is to provide the best facility they can, but there are restrictions within budget with that. And that has been a factor in our consideration of the potential scope for drainage aspects. Essentially, as part of the determination of the application, we looked at 4 different potential avenues that we could be explored, which again were alluded to by the public speaker. Basically, all of those are not particularly feasible due to the quality of the ground there as existing, and then also the ability for Northumbria Water to sort of take on any additional drainage into the external drains around the site. They have no requirement to do that. They have no illegal requirement to do that, so they can just refuse to do it, which is what has happened in this case. Leaving all those avenues, the only real feasible way of improving it for the drainage to be at the level we think that Sport England would be happy with would be a very expensive rainwater gathering system, which would likely undermine completely the viability of the proposal and just would not be feasible, which is then the approach that the council have taken in the consideration of it. I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but to go back and answer your point, really, it is a case of the loss in number, but then also that the facilities are, as there for the playing fields, aren't at a level where Sport England will be happy with that. And the knock-on effect of that is then the usability of them at times, the ability for them to be used in wet weather. It's going to take the grass up. It's then going to have an impact.
So that, which isn't set on the planning, because we can just, what's before us, but it does back up the view that people have expressed. I don't know the area myself, but that another site would be more suitable. But
any more questions? Councillor Malcolm Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Looks as if we're giving ourselves a headache, including that playing field. But am I right in saying that your suggestion is this building itself, the new school, will not impact onto the nature of that playing field, the wetness of it, the drainage need for it, all that stuff? Is that what you're saying?
The playing field itself,
yeah,
that is basically the drainage for the site. So that's being used as it's a case of what the LFA has done is it's a balancing act that they do. The excess runoff water has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It can't go in the drains, as I mentioned, and there's no permeability there. So basically, it's the playing fields or in a more sensitive area, talking about people's houses or the actual school building itself. So it's basically the best case scenario on the site to deal with the drainage issues, and that open area, that playing field is unfortunately the short straw with that, and is what's used to address that drainage issue.
Right, I think I understand that now. But, my next point is what's been mentioned about the conditions. Now, I've got a building site in my ward. I live on it. We've got wheel washing conditions attached to the planning we give them. However, what we've said is wheel washing must be available. So the developers made it available, but the drivers don't do it because they're on too tight a schedule. They've got to get back, get another load, get out another site. And going on from there, the state of the road, the internal road's terrible. And I keep going on them because they are going down with a sweeper, but they're not putting the water on. So they're not cleaning it. So it never gets cleaned properly. But outside on the main road now, it's gravel, it's dirt, it must be filling the drains up, we're going to get problems there. So rather than, you know, we're talking about tightening the conditions up, can we say wagons have to use the wheel washing facility? The site has to be cleaned, the road. The outside road has to be included in the cleaning on a regular basis. Twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever we decide, can we include it to make it a positive like condition instead of just leaving it up to whoever feels like doing it.
Yeah, the condition sets out that they've got to submit a construction method statement and with associated plans alongside it. So when that gets come in, we will look at it. And yes, by all means, we can tighten up the wording of it to ensure that there's more enforceability of it.
Just to make sure it's done.
Yeah.
And just from the chair, you know, to reiterate Julie Foster's point was that obviously on some applications it isn't happening, is it? And that was why, you know, she was getting all the mud on the road and residents, neighbouring residents were suffering. So we've really got to do our best, haven't we, to try and police these conditions to make sure that we're not just saying the word, but they're actually doing the deed as well.
Chair, if I may just come in on that point, because it was interesting to listen to the speaker raise experiences that they've had, and obviously our planning enforcement officers have been out. You know, when we read our construction management condition, it is strong and it is enforceable. Obviously then subsequent plans come in where the developer explains how they're going to manage the construction. And in those circumstances, the word reasonable starts to creep in. Everything's on a basis of what's reasonable and what can be achieved. What is not reasonable is that wagon drivers are too busy and they don't have time to stop and wash their wheels. Reasonable would be how frequent we would expect it, ground conditions and so forth. So I think what it has flagged to me is that there's conversations and more work that we could do with our enforcement officers and also just generally managing the sites coming online and how these construction management statements really are enforced and how we do them. They are there, it is a bit of a give and take, but they are there to protect neighbouring residents and their amenities. You know, with this one, that construction management statement that's proposed for this development is good and it is strong. It's just about us being able to manage those enforcement conversations better. But what I would say is lots of sites do come online where the developers do manage to operate within their construction management statements they submit. But obviously we've heard an example of it not working tonight, and we'll keep looking into that.
This is a need to have the construction method statement prior to the commencement of the development, because the one in my development came 18 months after commencement.
So regrettably it can be in some situations. So we generally always do it as a pre-commencement condition, but it can be the case that there's a bit of toing and froing on it and it doesn't actually get agreed whilst the developer has commenced development, which would have perhaps been a breach in those circumstances. But for the purposes of this application, it's very clear development shouldn't commence until that's been agreed.
Thank you. Martin, you've got a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit confused about the water runoff situation. We've heard lots of different points about it, and in my mind, it's not entirely clear. We know that all new sites now, there has to be no net increase in runoff for the site, would be the basic starting point. So you build a new school on the site, you've then got 2 schools on the site. Is there an interim position where there's a SUDS position? I haven't seen anything on the plans. Is there a SUDS for the new hard part of the site, as in the buildings, etc.? And then you were saying that the field was the place where the water had to go to. So are you saying that it goes onto the playing pitches themselves, or are you saying it goes into a SUDS arrangement?
Yeah, so for the second point, yeah, so it is the playing field itself. There is a SUDS element to the proposal, but essentially beyond that, that's then when the playing field comes into play. That is your basically, that's your access area, where it would go. And yeah, as I mentioned, there's taking a balanced view of it. There's no real suitable way where we can really progress with that and find a solution that will be feasible for the scheme and to work forwards with that. Regarding the first point, during the construction period, that would have an impact, as you do have an interim period where you're going to have a partially built school there whilst the existing school is still present, and then a period whilst the other school is then being demolished. I believe within the drainage strategy provided within the proposal, that has been an area of assessment and has been considered, and as I say, the LFA have raised no objection with it, and they're happy from their perspective that that's not going to be an area of concern or be detrimental to the proposal.
Okay, so
yes, Liz, would you like a word?
Well, I'm just sort of troubled that this is it's a point that I think I want to try and explain as clearly as I can, but please come back, Councillor Swinbank, if I haven't. So when we think about how the school manages the surface water runoff at the minute, it runs off ultimately into the football playing field that they've got. When the school has been built out and is fully operational, that same surface water system is going to be in operation. So there will be no net increase in the runoff from how it is now to how it will be when the school is built and fully operational, okay? That's how the surface water is managed on the site. However, during the construction phase, obviously there's going to be more buildings on the site and obviously a greater runoff coming onto that pitch. To make sure that that's all adequately managed, what the LLFA have asked through condition is details of how they're going to be managing the surface water runoff. So we don't know exactly what that is at the minute, but they have to submit details of that to the LLFA, and they are talking about there's a bullet, there's numerous bullets there in paragraph 7.72 as to what they want to see. So we don't have the technical details of it at the minute, but it's during that important construction phase that there's going to be further rigour for the applicant to demonstrate how they're managing the surface water runoff then. Then, once the school is complete, they go back to how it was previously managed, which is that it comes on to the football playing field. The issue for Sport England, and I just think this is an important point, it's separate to the drainage overall, so that's how the surface water is going to be managed on the site. Then in terms of what Sport England feel about this, they are saying that their calculations are saying that as a result of the new build, there's going to be a 30% decrease of protected open space on that site. So what they are asking for is, in order to compensate the school for that, they want a qualitative improvement to the drainage of the sports pitch, which can be out of action because it's wet if there's a lot of rain. So they are saying, rather than having to provide more pitch and more land, they're saying actually just improve the pitch that you've got. What the Department of Education, they have done a lot to look into this and work out whether there is a solution that is affordable for them. And because of the geology of the site, because of difficulties with draining into Northumbrian water systems because of surface water runoff, they don't actually have a viable solutions at the minute. So at the end, when the school is operational, what we will have is a continued experience for the school there, which is that all the surface water runoff is onto the pitch. And that's why Sport England have continued with their objection. They would have liked, as part of this whole overall scheme, to see that be improved, which would compensate for the loss of 30%. So this is finely balanced for members. It's been finely balanced for us as well. But we really want to see this new school. We do realise that the drainage could be better, but we think it's going to be well enough managed during the construction phase, and we don't think that there's going to be, because there's not going to be any net increase for the users and the pupils of that school, then on balance we've come to the conclusion that this is an acceptable scheme. But it has been finely balanced. So I hope that kind of explains the two differences between what Sport England are looking for and what the LLFA look for, and then ultimately what is going to be left for the end users there in terms of water on the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good explanation. Councillor Jeffreid.
Thanks, Chair. So, whatever we decide, if we accept this application, what we're being asked to do is if we're minded to approve it, it goes to the Secretary of State to decide. So, is the Secretary of State going to get all of this, or are they just going to get an executive? And is somebody going to explain to them about the drainage and the overall estate, or is it simply just going to be, we want to build a new school and the playing field might be a bit wet?
Yes.
You know,
well,
so
yes, the whole reason it's going is because of the Sport England objection.
I get that, Chair, but what I'm saying is,
yeah.
Will the Secretary of State get the full, proper explanation that we've had?
Yes.
So a proper decision can be made?
Yes.
Or is this going to be driven by the desire to see a new school built rather than the desire to have the whole thing done properly? That's kind of what the question is.
No. Well,
will they get the whole? Will they get the whole lot plus our minutes and everything? Is
So-
what I'm asking.
I can answer that for you. Basically, the Secretary of State don't make the decision. What we do is we refer your recommendation to them, and they decide based on all the information, so they get everything that's on public access, the reports and everything, and they make the decision whether or not they wish to call it in for a decision. It may be that they turn around and say, we don't wish to be involved, and carry on and make your decision that you're making today.
Okay. But I mean, what I'm saying is they have the opportunity to hear or have the opportunity to what we've talked about, and they will understand our concerns. It's not just kind of, oh, yeah. If the council say it's all right, I say it's all right.
No, they do a full consideration.
That's
We have
fine.
a case officer who looks through it.
That's fine, thank you.
Councillor Malcolm Robinson.
Liz, could we not have considered a rainwater capture and usage system on the school build?
It's not for us to make those suggestions to the applicant, but we have put it back to the applicant that we really wanted them to try and mitigate the surface water runoff and improve it. And they've come back to us with a really thorough report explaining all the reasons why it's just very difficult on that site to be able to attenuate the rainwater in any other way than allow it to drain onto the football pitch.
I'm just trying to think of ways where you could discharge it through the main sewage system.
You know, from the chair, can I just say, a lot of our, housing sites that we give approval to, yes, they're making a lot of money. They have very elaborate rainwater retention schemes. And, just opposite Embleton Hall, where I live, the silo tubes that they were putting in for the water retention, I thought, wow, what are we collecting here? Well, that's exactly it. And then it's all collected and it's discharged in minimal amounts, over the year when it's much drier. But unfortunately, we don't have the resource, do we? We don't have the money to put in such a water retention scheme. I wish we did. That's what's needed here. It is, but it's a very expensive addition. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? No more questions? Could I have a recommendation? Ian Hutchinson.
Having listened to all the debate and not taken part, because you've all done very well and said a lot, I'll propose the officer recommendation, but with the caveat that it goes back to yourself and the Director of Planning to beef up these conditions. Because, as I said, things are never enforced. It's never done properly. And if we've really got some tight conditions that we can enforce and go to them and say, you're not doing it right, do it right or else. So with that, I'll propose the officer recommendation.
Can I just interject at that stage? Sorry. Firstly, there's just a couple of things. I think we've had a discussion between us, and I think there's a couple of conditions that probably need a little bit adding to. So I don't know if you want to address those, Liz, first. Well, I think there's three. There's the Sport England, there's condition 18 and condition 21.
So, yeah, Chair, if you don't mind, there's three conditions that, just as we're listening to the debate and working through the conditions and taking on board the point about tightening up the conditions, if I could just propose some additional changes to the conditions. So the first one would be to condition 18. If we could add to the beginning of that, no development shall commence until details of the disposal of the surface water from the development through the construction phase is submitted to and agreed with the local planning authority, and final wording at the end of that, and thereafter implemented in accordance with the agreed scheme. That's condition 18. Then in condition 21, this is about the blockages being identified through the CCTV surveying, and instead of shall be, we're going to change that wording to has been submitted. And we think that will make that one more robust. And the final change was the condition that has been circulated to you yesterday, the condition that's come in from Sport England. So again, it's to make sure that in addition to the scheme being submitted and approved, that they also then implement in accordance with the approved scheme. So that it's just the final bit to make sure that they actually do it. So if we could, on your recommendation, Councillor Hutchinson, if we can actually add those changes to the conditions.
Malcolm's condition about wheel washing, strengthen that one up as well, because it is, I don't know if anybody went by the new station at Newsham. The road there is absolutely disgraceful, terrible. There's never been wheel washing at all there.
Councillor Hutchinson, obviously you want to approve it in accordance with the officer's recommendation and the conditions. Are you happy with those amended conditions? And do you want to add the condition from Sport England that was suggested?
Well, regarding Sport England, there are grants to be got from Sport England, so there could be applications made to them to get some money to actually drain the field.
But you're happy with the condition that Sport England have suggested? Yeah. In respect of, you said that you wanted more involvement with the Director of Planning and the Chair to try and beef up some of the conditions. I know obviously wheel washing, the state of the roads has been mentioned, etc. But I think as Liz has explained and Michael, that is done through discharge of condition, rather than the condition itself. The condition requires a scheme to be submitted, etc., and all of the detail is in the scheme, which doesn't come before members or the Director of Planning or the Chair. So I don't know, Liz, if you've got any comments about that.
Just having a quick look through this, and with Michael helping me on that, it's condition 9, Councillor Hutchinson, and it's about the wheel washing and the keeping the access roads clean. I was just going to suggest on that bullet 2, so the construction method statement and plan shall, where applicable, provide for, and then in bullet 2, vehicle cleaning facilities to include a wheel washing facility, and we could put another bullet in to ask for road washing facilities to be made available as well. No?
But no, I was going to say, as Malcolm said though, you're saying facilities to be there. We want them washed. When it's dirty, they should be washed. Fair enough in the summer when there's
regular wheel washing.
Wash them, not just have a facility there to look at, but to actually wash them.
Yeah, Councillor Hutchinson's they'll have to submit a new document And in that document, they'll set out how they're going to deal with it. And we'll tie it down in that document, because that'll become a live document for the development. And we'll tie them down to what they've agreed in that document. And we'll tighten it up as much as we possibly can.
So they won't just be provided?
The bullet points, that's what the stuff they've got to provide.
Yeah.
We will go down
But
to
you'll
the
make sure
nitty-gritty
they
of it, and
actually...
get their schedules and everything and how they go about it into this document.
And enforce otherwise?
With that condition. That condition won't be discharged until they've submitted that.
Well, enforce all the conditions. Thanks.
Is that recommendation seconded? By Councillor Malcolm Robinson. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Alex, and then...
Thanks, Chair. I nearly spoke earlier to see if Councillor Hutchinson would add a little bit more to the conditions, because I get confused. I live in a little village. To my left is a housing development of 49 homes. And if people complain, they wash the vehicles and they wash the road. To the right of where I live is a £130 million development, JDR. And there's nothing comes off that site unless it's been washed. And that's the road as well. And I've found over many, many years on planning, we don't have discussions about wheel watching, it's easy for me to say, when it comes to industrial applications. We always have the discussion when it comes to housing developments. But in this one, it's a school. I'm looking at it like a housing development, and I think many members would like to see it tightened up. At JDR, it's being built by Guildford Try. You pass a palisade fencing as you drive along that road, and there's great big banners up with their phone numbers on. If Mrs. Cannybody has a problem of following a great big lump of mud on the road, there's a phone number. She rings up and the guy makes sure that's shifted and it doesn't happen again. Can't we make sure that round this school there's a banner put up with the construction phone numbers on, the site foreman, or James's, because he's had an active role in this.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, James, only joking.
I don't think so.
I'm only joking. Right. Make it so the residents have an opportunity, because it's not just about the potential students going to that school, Chair. It's also about the quality of life, the residents who have had to endure problems for many years, and there's nobody in this building wants them to endure one more additional problem. And that's perhaps as a way to resolve it. And instead of Julie and David Nicholson and Choplin Parish Councillors getting complaints on Stayford Crescent, they go direct to the person who's responsible to eliminate them, and that's the man on the ground. So simple, you know.
Yeah, well, we can take that forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you.
You know, we've often seen these sites, haven't we, where, you know, they've got a construction. My dad is the worker, you know, let's keep this site safe. Well, it's the same for the workers on the site as it is for the pedestrians going past. Yeah. So, Georgina, you would like to say something about this application?
Yes, please. Just to take a step back for a minute from the detail that we're rightly going into with concerns about drainage in the sports field, I think just taking a step back, don't lose sight of the fact this is a really positive application. You know, as we say, we look at caravan parks, second homes, and all the rest of it. A new school, new development that's been decades and out of date, and for children to have modern facilities. So it is a really positive thing, and that's why I'm going to support it. Just on the concern that we're going to have to leave to, you know, the officers and the Secretary of State and Sport England. I mean, it is, you know, it's happening in high school, my area. The Astro pitch is out of use because of drainage issues, and to see children not being able to use the facilities. you know, and Morpeth, they found £6 million behind the back of the sofa for a new sports hall. They couldn't find 30,000 to fix the Astro pitch, but that, I mean, that's an aside. So, you know, that is an issue around the sports, and that's going to be have to thrash out. But the overall thing is, it is a very positive development that should be welcomed.
Any more? Martin?
I'm struggling here because obviously building a new school is a good thing. 60-year-old building, all the rest of it. But we're talking about the drainage issues as if the drainage is static, as if what was happening 60 years ago on this site is what's happening today on this site, is what's going to be happening in another 60 years on this site. We all know that due to climate changing, we're getting wetter weather. We are living that now, which means that the pitch is going to be wetter than it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. It's going to be, yes, less usable than it was at that time. The pitch has been reduced in area, or the playing area has been reduced, which is why Sport England have obviously raised this concern. And for the residents who live round about, the potential is there could be more runoff off this site now than there was 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, for the simple reason that we're getting more rain. So I'm really, really struggling. We want to see the school built. What we need to find is a solution to the drainage issue. There are solutions to these things. There are storm drainage attenuation systems which are put underground, put under playing areas, put under fields. It can be done. And then the runoff from the site is no greater than it would be normally. But obviously it does cost money. So I'm just really struggling to know where to put myself with this application, because I genuinely think that what we've got before us is going to be a worse outdoor environment for the children in the school in terms of where they can play, etc. And potentially it might affect off-site as well, because we haven't addressed the issue.
Just a tiny contribution from the chair. This is very much an application, a balance, isn't it? We've got a new school, and wow, how many of us want new schools in our patch? So it's a super, super opportunity. But on the other side, as Martin said, we've got the question of poor drainage. And, unfortunately, the budget just isn't there. And that is one slight black spot on the application, isn't it? We've got a great, hopefully, learning environment. We're going to have, there are lots of great things there, this forest school, the play area, the hard standing. But unfortunately, the playing pitches are going to be wet. But, my wish is that, hopefully someday soon we're going to find the money to actually put in our storm attenuation system. It is. And it's very difficult, but for me, it's got to be the new school. It has. Yes, there is a slight disadvantage, but putting my tick in the box behind a new Ringway Primary School at Stakeford. Thank you. Councillor Hutchinson, would you like to sum up or close the debate, sir?
Yes, thank you. I'll sum up also, but in Altwhistle, the football field used to be a school field. It was really wet. Quite often the football team couldn't play football on it. They had to play on other pitches elsewhere. It was really bad. And they applied for some money to Sport England. And I gave them some money as well. And it totaled something like, I think it was about 80,000 to get it drained. It's immensely better than it was. It's still wet, but it's a lot better than it was, and they can play on it. They're restricted to the number of games they can play because if it gets too bad. But it is possible to get it done, and this is a playing field that we're dealing with here, a school and a playing field. So it is possible to apply to Sport England for a grant to drain this field. Having said that, I support this application. We do need the facilities, and I think we're going to need more facilities, the number of houses we're being told to build. So we've got to have it. But I would love to think that, as you said, something can be done with this field to alleviate the problems that the neighbours have and the field itself, which the school will have also. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this application has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? One's abstained. Thank you. Certainly. We'll have 5 minutes. Is that okay? Ladies and gentlemen, the next application is on page 93, agenda item number 7. And this is for the installation of a battery energy storage system, a BESS as they're known, with associated infrastructure in connection with the Low Horton solar farm. And this is land south of Haverock Hall roundabout on the A192 at Haverock Hall, Cramlington, Northumberland. Gordon Halliday, our consultant, is going to speak to this application. Gordon, over to you, sir.
Okay, Chairman, I'll try and be briefer than I normally am, given the late hour. So that's the site location. It's 1.4 hectares of land, of which 0.4 hectares is actually the built development comprising the batteries and inverters. It's part of an agricultural field that is bordered by the A1061 to the north and the A192 to the east. It's located in the green belt. It's right in the far northwest corner of the green belt. That's the site context. That plan shows you the Low Horton solar farm that you granted permission for in 2022 further north. And at that time, you also granted permission for cabling to link into a substation that is located on the same field as the BESS. The sort of main elements of the proposal, as I said, it's 0.4 hectares of a 1.4 hectare site within its own compound enclosed by a security fence. The BESS infrastructure comprises various 24 batteries and various other bits of equipment, operation and maintenance building. There would be no on-site presence during, after construction there'd be no on-site presence, so there's no sort of office building or anything like that. Outside the actual compound, there is also things like a water tank, pump house, fire water attenuation tank, which are requirements in case of any incident, together with an attenuation basin and access roads, CCTV cameras and a biodiversity enhancement area that makes it comply with the biodiversity net gain requirements. So that's the actual layout plan. You've got the A192 running down the eastern side of the site. Then you've got the sort of built form of the development, and then the landscaping and other aspects further west. The sort of substation further west again. Access is off the A192 onto an existing track, so that already is an access, and as you'll see by the photographs, it's got good visibility displays either side. The sort of big issue with this proposal really is the fact that it's in the green belt. So what's the justification for it? So it's linked to the Low Horton solar farm. As I said, you've already approved the solar farm, including the cable route running south to the substation that is in the green belt adjoining the proposed development. So, you sort of have already accepted that part of this overall Low Horton solar farm development would include a substation in the green belt. It provides a point of connection to the national grid via the existing overhead 66 kV lines, and the BESS needs to be located close to that point of connection for maximum efficiency. So it could have been located elsewhere, but in order to maximise the efficiency of the facility, it is proposed to locate it adjacent to the substation in its proposed location. What is a BESS? Well, a BESS assists in the integration of renewable energy with the grid. It has a capacity of 50 megawatts. It enhances grid stability, and it provides backup power to reduce the threat of power outages. BESS developments are supported both by your own Northumberland local plan, local policy, and also by national planning and energy policy. But it does represent inappropriate development in the green belt. BESS developments, that's made clear, and that's continued into the new national planning policy framework. So you do need very special circumstances to allow inappropriate development in the green belt, and that basically requires the potential harm to the green belt and any other identified harm to be clearly outweighed by other considerations. So our view on this application is that the BESS will be harmful to the openness of the green belt, but that harm is limited and it's mitigated by a number of factors. It's mitigated by existing screening from the south, east and west. It's mitigated by the sort of limited area, as I said, 0.4 hectares of built development, and also the limited height of the proposed structures, which are no more than 3 meters in height. It's limited by the siting adjacent to the approved substation, which you have already accepted, justified very special circumstances for its inclusion in the green belt. And it's also mitigated by the various landscaping proposals that the applicant has put forward, including tree and hedgerow planting to the north. And it's from the north that really the sort of only existing views are into the site. Other planning considerations: the appraisal has found moderate harm to landscape character and visual amenity. The proposed habitat creation represents a moderate benefit, and the appraisal has also found that any adverse impacts on other interests, including residential amenity, heritage assets, etc., have been adequately addressed by the applicant together with the recommended conditions. There aren't any cumulative impacts sufficient to warrant refusal, and the security issues identified by Northumbria Police are considered to be a matter for the applicant himself. So this is the view of the site from the proposed access point, that sort of little track that leads off the A192. You can see the overhead pylons in the background. That's the existing access. It's a large access with good visibility displays north and south, and that's from inside that access point looking out onto the A192. That both shows the existing good visibility to the north, but it also it shows this very good existing hedgerow adjoining the A192 that will provide significant screening of the proposed development. That's from inside the site, again looking east at the A192, at the hedging along the A192 road. And this is the only site, view of the site really that is open at the present time. And that's the view of the site from the Laverick Hall roundabout. So that's about 350 metres from the site. You can see the overhead lines, the planting on the west of that photograph is the existing planting down the A189 road. The A192 hedgerow is on the left of that site, and the proposed site is down in the bottom southeastern corner of that particular field. So in conclusion, you sort of know what the proposal is for. It would make a positive contribution to the supply of renewable energy, contribute to climate change objectives, and these are benefits which are afforded significant weight in the planning balance in line with government planning and energy policy. It would be inappropriate development and could potentially result in some harm to openness, and that also carries substantial weight. The assessment has shown or has identified that the proposals would result in moderate landscape and visual harm, but these adverse effects are localised and limited and will reduce as the landscape planting matures. The proposed habitat creation involving natural grassland, species-rich hedgerow planting and sustainable drainage system meets the biodiversity net gain requirement and represents a moderate benefit. All the other effects are acceptable or can be made acceptable through appropriate mitigation or the imposition of planning conditions. And in this case, the benefits are considered to outweigh the limited harm, and overall it is concluded that very special circumstances do exist for development in the green belt. Therefore, the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions as set out. There are no objections to the proposal, as you will have seen from the report, and there are no updates. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you very much. We have one public speaker this evening, ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Selwyn. Mr. Selwyn, you've got 5 minutes, sir. Over to you.
Good evening. My name's Jonathan Selwyn, and I'm the Managing Director of Bluefield Renewable Developments, the applicant for this project. I'm happy to be back at Northumberland Council Planning Committee following your previous approvals for our solar projects at Low Horton and Burnt House, and also for the solar and battery project at Broadway House Farm. By way of a reminder, the Bluefield Group is a UK-based business which develops, builds and operates solar and battery projects on behalf of our funders, Bluefield Solar Income Fund and the local authority pension platform GLIL. They've invested over £1.8 billion in solar and battery projects and currently provide around 3% of UK daytime electricity. Bluefield has 150 UK-based staff, and we own and operate the projects we develop, and we therefore establish long-term relationships with local communities and local authorities. As the officer has said, we're now applying for permission to build a battery storage system to complement Low Horton Solar Farm. The proposed site is on a small parcel of greenbelt land owned by the same landowner as the solar farm and bordered by 3 A roads and adjacent to the consented DNO substation which will serve the solar farm and which itself connects into the existing overhead power lines. The fenced-off compound represents a third of the development site, with, as mentioned, a third of it being given over to a biodiversity enhancement area consisting of a meadow and 25 new proposed trees. The battery project will achieve a biodiversity net gain of 11.84% in habitat units and 75% in hedgerow units, in addition to the net gain of 76% from the solar farm. The site is 100% Grade 3B land, representing former shallow coal mining, and it's been located carefully following consultation with the Coal Authority. There are no public rights of way across the site. Decommissioning and full restoration of the site at the end of life will be secured by a planning condition, and there will be no change to land classification. There's good access for construction, and there have been no public objections and no objections from statutory consultees. As mentioned, battery storage projects are complementary to renewable energy technologies, helping achieve climate change targets and supporting the UK's urgent need for energy security. In particular, they help to balance generation against demand, stabilise the grid and reduce the likelihood of blackouts. Fire safety is absolutely paramount in our battery projects. All projects in the UK must comply with stringent health and safety guidelines established by international regulatory bodies such as the IEC. These standards encompass the installation, operation and maintenance of the systems. We undertook detailed engagement with the Northumberland Fire and Rescue Service and we followed their recommendations, and the bespoke fire safety management plan is included within the approved plans. There is also an emergency response plan and a fire safety management procedures. In addition, all battery containers have built-in monitoring and control systems which shut down systems remotely in the event of a fault, therefore reducing the risk of fire. Battery containers are carefully spaced to ensure any fire is contained and isolated. Fire suppression equipment is fitted to each battery container and triggered automatically in an emergency, and a water tank attenuation system is also provided on site as a secondary containment source. We're committed to engaging with local communities at all stages of project development and construction. We keep our residents updated on all our activities and give them a point of contact for any queries and operate a local WhatsApp group. We also contribute funds to local community projects as part of our project investment, and we intend to enhance the package of community benefits already offered to Blythe Town Council. And we'd also like to develop a local skills training and apprenticeship programme as part of the wider investments. So to sum up, Low Horton battery system will complement the already approved solar farm and help address local and national climate policies. As concluded by the planning officer, very special circumstances justify its greenbelt location, and it is therefore consistent with local planning policy, and it will follow the Fire and Rescue Services guidelines. I therefore trust you'll be taking your case officer's recommendation to approve this scheme. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Selwyn. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, have you any questions you'd like to put to our planning officers about this application? Councillor Jeffreid.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a couple of things, really. Gordon, you made quite a big thing of how easy it was. You know, you come to the junction, you can see both ways. That wouldn't be a thing that I would be terribly worried about. If the thing's going to be constructed, then it's going to be left. I was just wondering whether we have any idea how often it'll be visited by humans.
I mean, the sort of reason I really highlighted that was for the construction of the facility. Right. You know, so that I mean, highways haven't requested any additional conditions on that. It would be visited occasionally. So there would be a regular visiting regime, but I mean, it is a facility that you know, it doesn't need someone on site all the time. It doesn't need someone to visit it on a daily or weekly basis, but it would be regularly visited as part of the ongoing operation of the facility. Right.
I mean, if you're going to be, if you need one of these things to make the solar farm work properly, then really there isn't a better place than this, is there?
Well, this is in terms of efficiency, it should be located as close as possible to the point of connection. Yeah. So the point of connection here is the substation and the overhead lines. So that's why they've come forward with this as a location, as opposed to, for example, a site on the existing Low Horton site. You would actually lose efficiency over the cabling route. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be there. But it's desirable that it is there, and it makes it more efficient if it is there.
That's All chair, really. I mean, as I say, to me, you have to have it. Then this is virtually, you know, as you say, the opening's there. It's right next to where you need it to be. If anything happens, the fire and rescue service can be there in, I don't know, 5 minutes. And it's not a danger to anything else, really, is it? Unless it catches fire and brings a pylon down and blacks out the whole country, of course. But that's
well, it's about
that's probably something not very likely to happen.
It's actually about 250 metres away from the pylons, and it's about 350 metres away from the nearest property. So I mean, it is, in terms of being a safe location, it's as safe as you could probably find in southeast Northumberland, which is obviously a highly populated area.
Councillor Robinson and then Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chair. Gordon, you made great play about the green belt and whatnot, and I'm going to park that to one side because it looks like central government's going to drive a coach and horses through that legislation.
Or build one anyway.
But yeah, so I'm going to concentrate on the safety aspect of it, because I know these things are fairly new. They haven't got vast reams of safety legislation about them, but there is a NFCC guidance, National Fire Chiefs. Have we adopted that, and have the fire brigade used that as a basis to negotiate with the developer to tick all the boxes in that? Because that at least will give us some comfort that what's been produced as health and safety up to now has been addressed.
Yes, as Mr Selwyn said, the Bluefield engaged very closely with the Fire and Rescue Service prior to the submission of the application in order to make sure that it was in accordance with the provisions of the National Fire Chief Council's guidance. And similarly, following the application, we've consulted with the fire service, and the fire service again have confirmed that so that they are happy with that. There's actually new guidance in draft form, which will be which will probably be implemented later this year, and the applicant has had regard to that new draft guidance as well. Although, you know, for our purposes, we've got to assess it against the existing guidance, which is referred to in planning policy guidance. So certainly we are satisfied. The fire service is satisfied that that sort of this proposal has done everything it can to comply with existing safety legislation.
That's, you know, that gives comfort. The reason I'm asking, the reason I want to try and get this right from the off is because I can see this sort of facility coming to us quite often. All the solar farms have got.
Well, you
probably
can
need it to plug in. So, you know, I can see more and more of them coming.
Well, you approved one 18 months ago at Bedlington on the Bluefield farm one. And you will be getting another one coming forward at Burnt House Farm from the same applicant, and you will also be considering one up at Whittenstall, which is the subject of another current application. So you're right. It makes sense to actually build a BESS at the same time as you're developing a solar farm, because it just improves the efficiency of the whole operation, makes it better that electricity is available on a 24 hours, 7 day a week basis.
Yeah, the thing is about the other ones that we're talking about, the ones that I've got in the back of my mind, residential properties are a hell of a lot closer than what we've got on this one. And I think Councillor Reid's right, this is probably the best site, the easiest site to do it to begin with. So let's make sure we've got the legislation right and everything else, because the likelihood is, certainly when you talk about the Bedlington one, I'll be going into much greater detail because of the closeness of residential properties.
Well, we're still waiting on that application, so we'll sort of wait and see exactly where sort of that is going to be located. Yeah.
Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, before I ask Mr Halliday my question, can I just say I sit on the Governance and assurance panel in Northumberland Fire and Rescue Service, and the key word, Malcolm, is prevention. That's the moral prevention. And I can recall when British Volt were coming to Camas, I said, there's no car battery plant in the UK. How can you give us that assurance? And they could. Because, exactly, yeah, well, I didn't, sadly. Mind you also give them approval, don't forget, Jeff. But I mean, this organisation, best of my memory, it's the first time they've come to Northumberland, but have them nationwide. So the Fire and Rescue Service have plenty of opportunity to go out and make all assurance will be in it for residents and everything. Anyway, my question's simple. I did read in the newspaper, and I know James isn't here, but the only newspaper I believe is the Northumberland Gazette, of course. The others I'm not too sure about. But I did read, following the application for a solar farm, that access to the national grid couldn't be done for the next 10 years. I can recall reading that. Now, plan permission for this is 5 years, and we traditionally give 3, I think, but we're given 5 in this instance. So my question is very simple, but long-winded, so my apologies. Will they have access to the grid when the 5 years is up?
Yeah, well, our understanding is that you approved the Low Horton solar farm, and at that stage it had an offer from the grid for connection, and the reason that they're coming forward now for the BESS is that they've now got an offer from the grid. So yes, there sort of is a national delay, but it doesn't mean in every case. The 10 years you're referring to it sort of meant that in some cases a developer can wait for up to 10 years. In this case, we're assured that isn't the case, and the applicant is content with a 5-year commencement.
Thank you, Chair. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, could I just ask that you might agree to suspend standing order 5.4 of the council procedure? Yeah. All those in favour? Thank you. Everybody there. Thank you very much indeed. So, have we any more questions? Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a simple one about the definition of green belt, the difference between a greenfield site and a brownfield site. I see that this is going to be remediated after 40 years. Does that have any negative implications for that land, or does it just become green belt again? It doesn't mean that it becomes a brownfield site.
This land will still be green belt. It will still be included in the existing green belt, you know, after it's developed. Okay, this sort of government's bringing forward this sort of new green belt called grey belt, but this isn't the sort of land that would fall under that. So it's green belt now. It will be green belt during the development, albeit that it will be built on, and it will be green. But well, who knows what's going to happen in 40 years' time? But all things being equal, it will still be green belt in 40 years' time.
So it couldn't be considered as a brownfield site at that point, at the 40-year.
Well, yes, it will be a brownfield site, but you do get brownfield sites within the green belt. That's what the sort of government is now proposing is going to be, or should be developed as grey belt. Developers should be focusing their attention on brownfield site rather than greenfield site. So yes, this 0.4 hectares of land will be brownfield in 40 years' time, but it will still be green belt. It will be brownfield land within the green belt.
Okay, so just
We'll
for clarity, I'll just rephrase my question a little bit. So at the 41-year point, if we got an application in, or whoever sat here gets an application in for housing, would that be presumed as okay or not?
Well, I think you're in the, you're sort of in the realms of speculation. I mean, yes, in 40 years' time, this 0.4 hectares of land could be construed as being brownfield, and therefore, you sort of might be able, it might be more susceptible to building a few houses on. But I mean, it's not well located, is it, to existing urban development? So it's not likely to happen.
Chair, I don't think we'll be alive in 40 years' time to worry about it.
No, probably not.
Can I chip in here? Because I disagree with Gordon's interpretation about whether it would be brownfield or greenfield. I think because this site, there is a requirement to restore the land after the 40-year period. It defaults back to being effectively greenfield land, so it doesn't meet with the current definition of previously developed land because you're having to sort of restore that site. So it's a principle like we have, for example, with mineral sites, where we would kind of restore those sites. So this specific wording in the glossary of the MPPF would kind of covers that, where you have that restoration in place. So I think that would mean that would fall in under the greenfield category rather than the brownfield category. But as we say, we don't know what happens in 40 years' time, whether that definition changes. I hope that helps clarify it.
Thank you. Any more comments, ladies and gentlemen? Someone like to move a recommendation?
More than happy to move the recommendations, Chair. Now that I know how many angels are dancing on the head of this pin, I'm delighted to move this recommendation.
Thank you very much. Is that seconded? Councillor Malcolm Robinson seconded it. Anybody like to speak to the application? Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, before Councillor Reid sums up, you can't really have solar without battery capture. Otherwise, what's the point? You know, you don't put the lights on during the day, but you do in the dark. I mean, I've got solar panels and batteries, and after a little bit of fiddling about, you know, they're working tremendously. Although there's some days they don't work, but that's just the way of the world. I mean, equally, you've all got football pitches at schools that flood when it's wet. You know, who's got the wettest football pitch? We'll have to have a look at that. But the way I see it is, we're going to have to do this more and more. The more these renewables keep coming in, you know, one thing will attract another application of a battery storage. If we can't capture this, because, you know, the main forms of renewable is from the sun, from the wind, or water. There's only one of them runs all the time, and that's water. The rest rely on the weather pattern or the sun to shine, and it doesn't always work that way. However, we've got to capture it when it's there. And that's that. I think, you know, we talk about carts before the horse. I think this should have been in before the solar application, because unless we can capture the energy that we require at night, we're really wasting our time.
Thank you, Councillor Dodd. Sound words. Anyone else, or am I going to ask Councillor Reid?
No, let's put us out of our misery, Chair.
Yes, indeed.
Can I not say out?
Yeah. So as I said, if we have to have these, which we do, then I can't think of a better place. It's a good straight road. It's within easy reach of the rescue service if needed, and I'm sure, you know, that. And as far as it's going to be monitored, obviously, with CCTV and all the rest of that stuff. There'll be a fence. And it's less likely to be vandalised, I would have thought, because on foot or anywhere, and any other way of getting there, it's, you know, it's a long way from anywhere, really. So I'm really pleased that we're kind of moving on and we're capturing the recycled bit, and, you know, let's try and always make this an exemplar of it. Let's have the best there, and let's have people say, oh, let's go to Northumberland and see how they've got it all working. You know, the planners and the councillors and the council itself all want this stuff. We're encouraging this. You know, we've got the space, we've got the technologies. You know, we've got the big interconnectors from Norway and all the rest of that stuff. So, you know, let's embrace this and, you know, get on with it, Chair.
Music to my ears, Councillor Reid. Music to my ears. So that's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Unanimous. Good one to end on. Only 2 remaining items on the agenda, and they're for information. Appeals and Section 106 update. No urgent business. Thank you for your attendance and your decisions this evening.